So yeah, really glad to be here. And for this first panel, we will talk about open by design. What does that mean for the European open source ecosystem? What does that mean for sovereignty, for a trustworthy ecosystem? So I will ask you first to introduce each other. You know, what do you do? What institution do you work for? And then we will have the discussion all together, right? So maybe you want to start?
Yeah, hello. My name is Nicolas Flores. I work for Fraunhofer IIS in Germany. And I wrote the proposal, and I'm one of the managers of the project SOPHI. The SOPHI project deals with training large language models from scratch, of different sizes and variations.
John?
I'm John Ashley. I'm a solution architect at NVIDIA. I lead our global public sector team.
Thank you. Oleg?
My name is Lavrovsky, or Oleg, and I am the technical community manager for the Apertis project at the Swiss AI Initiative. Very happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Julie Hunter, and I'm a research engineer at Linagora. My background's in linguistics, but I've switched over to NLP, and now I'm running the work on the development of models in the OpenLLM France project.
So my first question is just to agree on the terms, you know, because without agreeing on the terms, it's hard to debate or argue, is about open, right? Open by design. So we could spend, of course, hours to debate about what is open, but for you, can someone give you one impulsion, one hint about, for you, what would be an open, what does that mean? What does open mean in terms of open source AI, right? So just an idea if you can share with us.
I think most of us here go pretty far with that definition. So, I mean, at Linagora and OpenLLM France, it is really every single step that you would need, every resource that you would need to recreate, to go through the process that we went through. So our training code, all our model checkpoints, of course, but also intermediate checkpoints, which are really important to be able to see how a model is learning over time through the training process. It's also really important if people want to pick up on your project, take a mid-state of the model and just retrain it to be better in a specific language or something like that. Very important. Also, of course, the training data, and that's a very complicated a point. Not everyone's in agreement on that one, but Linagora and I think we're all in agreement on that one here. We do share all of our data in the format it was used for training. And I think, have I forgotten anything else? Yeah. Oh, I want to say too, for open, technical papers are also very important. Documenting why you've made decisions. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, you want to go?
So I started the Luciole project this morning that came out yesterday.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
And I noticed the technical report is on its way out.
Yeah.
No, so for us, openness is a scientific goal. It is a continual process. The Apache 2.0 license that we adopt for both our model developments is very key to that, as well as understanding and sometimes negotiating licensing of data for use in training under permissive licenses. And definitely everything that you've said, I would undersign.
Yeah, in the preparation of the panel, there's one word that I really liked about the scientific aspect is reproducibility, right? The ability to be able to do it again based on what we have, right?
Well, at the moment, we cannot reproduce what we do without John's hardware. So that's a bit of a sticking point for us.
Yeah. But that's maybe an end goal. Yeah. And John, you also have a great definition that we had earlier about openness.
Yeah, we had talked, right, open, obviously we're looking, right, open weights. That was where open started in the LLM space. And I think we can all agree that's not enough. And so the journey continues, right? Openness is a journey. And so that journey continues, right? Open data, open recipes, right? How did you use the data in the model? And really looking forward to that whole thinking about your supply chain, because you're never going to be completely independent. You're never going to be completely in a place where you have no other, right? You're always building on what came before, right? When I go to school, I learn, I get my degree. I've learned from the open science that people have distilled and built, and I've got this great foundation. Then I can go off to a company and work with the proprietary data and get trained on that. And so I think this model of open to closed, we already have it in natural intelligence. We need to just think of it that way for artificial intelligence too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I very much agree with what all the speakers before me have said. I think there's two aspects that I encounter. So in our project, a lot of researchers work, and for them, the absolute openness in the sense of a scientific reproducibility of results, that's really key for them. So that means like not only publishing a tech report that goes without saying, but the data pipelines and also the data sets, which because of the copyright situations, it's always challenging to publish training data sets, even under scientific licenses, not even talking about Apache 2. But that is really important to them because the time they spend working on preparing a data set for the community, they need to publish that, and when they can put it open source, like in a really with a permissive license, that's what will give them some bonuses from the scientific community. They will get invited to the main conference papers and so on and so on, and that is really important because in Europe, those scientists are a key factor of building that, and we need to cater the building of sovereign models around those scientists. Then there's the industry aspect, where transparency has a completely different focus. If I have a model, a base model that comes out, or a post-trained model, I really want to adapt it to my own data. And if I don't know what's in the data, topics like fine-tuning, continued pre-training, it will be very, very difficult. And so we don't only need to know, yeah, this data has been trained on books. Well, you need to really specifically name the corpus. So that is also the second really vital aspect of transparency. And of course, in SOPHI, we are all releasing the model under permissive licenses. All the other things are a spectrum, I would say.
So just to say, there will be questions, so prepare if you have questions, you know, put that please in your context window to be able to give them, to answer, to ask them back at the end of the panel. Also, someone told me that actually we solved the transcribing issue, so you'll be able to follow there. So before going to you, John, on as the industrial enabler of all of this, I will ask the three, let's say, initiatives, like, for you, can you tell us about your journey, right? What has been hard? What has been difficult? Was it compute access? Was it data set building, data set access you were mentioning? Is it talent, you know, to keep talent in universities or to stay in the open source movement when top players are paying by millions, dozens of millions, actually, to have them? Can you share your true story? Like, no bullshit, we say, right? Who want to start? You want to start, Julie?
Sure. For us, I mean, a little bit compute, even though I have to say we've had a great time with Idris. We've trained all of our models on Jean-Z, and with Jinsi and Idris, they've been very supportive, and it's a great supercomputer.
Jean-Z, the French supercomputer, yeah.
Yeah. But of course, I mean, John and I were talking about this earlier, what makes training hard, especially if you're kind of new at it, is really that you need to test. If you want to test something scientifically, what do? You change one element that you've tested. And so these are called like ablation studies. And when we're training models, in order to really figure out, you know, what is this hyperparameter, what impact is it going to have on my model, I've got to train a model. And so it's really a lot of compute that's needed to understand a problem. And then, of course, there's the problem that you might want to train a little model to make a test to save compute. But that doesn't necessarily scale up. I mean, you know, I was confident the other day, I told my team to, you know, go ahead and train the 8B. We're in post-training right now for our 8B model. And, you know, we were basing our decision on what was happening with the 1B models, but we ended up training 2 to test the 8B. The results were completely reversed. So you've got to actually test also on the bigger models. So the need for compute, I think, is just so great if you're needing to do tests, that is a roadblock inevitably.
So compute, you had the help of Jean-Z and everything. Yeah. Talent and data sets, it was okay?
Oh no, data's horrible too. Talent, I think, is fine. I don't think that's the biggest roadblock. I really think it's data, especially if you're trying to work in a foreign language. So we'd focus on French. I mean, most of the data is in English. Oh. And a lot of the data that you have to get now for post-training is, if you want to have, you know, foreign language data, it's synthetic. So, you know, you have influence from, you know, those other models and stuff. To really try to make quality data is definitely difficult.
So on a scale of toughness,
Yeah.
From 1 to 10, like how is the toughness of building Luciel?
Oh, I mean,
I mean, we need to share.
I don't have much of a, I mean, I don't have much of a reference point is the thing, you know, we just kind of went into this. And I will have to say, and this is not just a plug for NVIDIA because John is here, but it has been made a lot easier by the fact that there are at least people who have shared, you know, libraries and you know, like training kits and everything. So we know all the training code. We did not have to, you know, reinvent the wheel with architecture and stuff like that. We were able to use Nematron recipes. We have custom recipes, but, you know, we're dealing with small customizations. So that really took a lot of the load off. It could have been a lot harder. But data, yeah, I mean, it took us, I mean, I think it took us a year to train both the Lucy model and then the Luciel models. And a lot of that is data preparation.
Yeah, time is part of the design, right? You know, time
Yeah.
is important, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, like, maybe you want to share the purchase, because when purchase was published and launched, right, it has been a big, let's say, movement. Like a lot of people congratulated it, you know, at the time.
I mean, which is a challenge in itself. You know, for an academic project, I have to say getting too much media attention, too many people wanting to build use cases immediately from the start is a bit of an issue, right? It's distracting from the goal of the project, which is very much to have an independent research agenda, to not be dictated when, you know, how do we want to develop the project. And we're completely public funded and, you know, not responsible to the sponsors of the project. But I think when it comes to the issues, I mean, likewise, I very much applaud the efforts of our engineering team at the CSCS facility in Lugano, who have been keeping, you know, those GPUs up and running, massive amounts of, you know, bandwidth that was available to the project. But, you know, cybersecurity is a real issue for us. So, you know, we are constantly having to experience delays due to patching cycles, due to, you know, just the issues of running such a complex IT system. And the other thing is, you know, I think just in general terms, yes, there's great talent, excellent funding sources, but in Europe, we really have an energy problem, right? Like we, in Switzerland, have an energy problem. We cannot scale up because of just the capacity that we have. We are very dedicated to training on sustainable sources. So we are like 90% plus hydropower on the data center. But, you know, we're still having to rely on backup power because guess what? There's not enough water to keep the generators running all the time. We're trying to reuse thermal energy from homes, but guess what? You know, that's a process to get all the collaboration with the energy utilities working. So I think this is kind of like, you know, the bottleneck that generally people see when it comes to comparing the performance, you know, how much energy can you really put into this? And, you know, when it comes to data, maybe just one other kind of war story to share is that we are seeing people change their licenses midterm, for example. You know, like things are being published under one set of licenses, also, you know, in the academic community, not just, you know, this is kind of an issue. We have to see that people are reevaluating their choices. We're depending on, you know, the honesty and the commitment of the people producing data sets. And they are often also trying to do due diligence in turn, right? So we have kind of per row compliance issues. And it becomes a real, you know, problem to solve, like to have to filter down to the row level in terms of understanding really the legal constraints of a particular data set. And we do not have that global view. I mean, we are in a, you know, on a very tight timelines. We have to move forward, and so we rely on an ecosystem of open data providers and sharers and also investigators. And I think this is also where the open source community could put a lot more effort into helping us to improve the situation.
So we're real feedback from the field. You know, even success can be an issue at some point. You know, too early success can be an issue into like having the time and to keep your pace and being independent. So thank you for this true feedback about the reality, right? Maybe Nicolas, you want to share your compute data people, whatever other problems, copyright or others?
Yes, of course. Happy to be very honest here.
Yeah, we expect you, as a German, we expect you to be truly direct. No, I'm joking.
Bien sûr. Okay, where to start even? One thing is that, and we will talk about that, I think, a little bit later on, there's a lot of funded projects, publicly funded projects, be it from the states, from the national states, be it from the European Union. What is always being funded are research consortia. Research consortia, and I have to say it very directly here, is not the right format to build models. Because in research consortia, as the name says, they are researchers. The KPI of researchers is to put out papers. If they produce a model, that's great for them, but that's an added bonus. They need to publish on NeurIPS, ACL, main conference papers. That is what gets them their PhD, that's what gets them their professorship. Yeah. So and how to negotiate kind of, hey, take a little bit of your research time, actually a lot, and build a model with us. Yeah, so from a project management perspective, and I've been through this is very, very challenging. So what did we do differently in SOFI, and why does it work so well? We had publicly procured compute. We are training our model on a telecom AI cloud, and that is, we have this exclusively for us, so that's different than the Swiss or Jersey. And that is really a lot of fun for the people. The people want to have fun. They can use 1000, Blackwell 200, DGX, and they are super fast and everyone's super happy. So that is kind of the incentive that we have. And we really, the other thing is, not one university, not one Fraunhofer Institute can do the model building just by themselves. That's not possible. So we need to work across institutions, and we managed to, SOFI was launched in September, and we had to start training a 30B model in March. So, and then getting everything prepared and together and the teamwork, that was a lot of challenge, because like cooperation is not also something that in those research projects that I mentioned is done. Then all the other spectrum, European regulation. So I'm filling out more forms than looking actually at the training progress it fills. And that is something that has to change. I think it's important that AI is good for entire of Europe, but it doesn't mean that we have to over-regulate. I have to be very clear on this. It's not a very popular opinion. In Europe, we need to catch up. And in order to catch up, we need to have the freedom to build great models without red tape, actually duct tape, when you're trying to do a marathon. It's not possible on your feet, I mean. Yeah. So this is the other thing, and I'm very happy to take questions from all of you. Really the last thing is that we need much more compute. We need more cloud data centers. You have mentioned it, and I've been also talking with Imanol from your team. There is not enough experiments. We always think, oh yeah, the DeepSeek model that was published in January 25, that was so cheap. No, it's not. It's 1,000 experiments. We trained our first model on about 400,000 GPU hours. You say, oh, that doesn't break the bank, that's not much. But in order to build the next generation, we need to spend 10 times as much on experiments, data, architecture, you name it. And without that, we can't even talk about frontier models. So all these discussions around the AI gigafactories, that, oh, does Europe need all this compute, and thinking. Please, we need to put this down. We don't have enough compute. We need, in the next 2 years, at least triple the amount of AI compute in Europe.
Yeah, so research, I'm losing my voice. Research incentives, maybe something diversing from building models. And it's funny what you say. Researchers, they want to do papers, but at some point, they have been known to be researching funds. But now you need also to find compute. They like to be so it's even more. Let's say, constrained on the role of a researcher, because even with the money, sometimes compute is not easy to find. So that's really challenging.
There's large European consortia that don't have enough compute to train a proper model. That's ironic, but it's true. That's the reality of European funding, and we need to change this urgently.
Yeah.
It's frustrating for the people personally. Yeah,
I agree. The Shakespearean, like Richard III, like my kingdom for a horse, right? So my kingdom for some compute, right? So that's the idea. John, you're in the industrial here, and you provide the whole planet on chips. The thing is, to your mind, what is your role? What is your role here in collaborating, supporting, I don't know, investing, you will tell us, but with all these model initiatives, all these open model initiatives?
So I think you've maybe heard a couple things already, right? One of the things that some people don't know about NVIDIA is we're not actually a chip company, right? We actually have far more software engineers than we have hardware engineers. And so our goal around providing the tools and the recipes is we want to make it easier for a diverse ecosystem to exist, right? We're not a charity that way, right? We're a business, but we think the best way for us to be relevant is to have a vibrant, active community of customers, of people that want to do things that are useful. Because if they're not doing useful things, they're not going to do it. And research gets you there, right? Research teaches you how to do new useful things. So research is great. We got to support research. We've been on an open journey as well, right? So our first Nemotron model was not as open as our second one was. The Nemotron 3 family is open weights. I think we're maybe there's some edge cases, but basically open recipe. And as everyone has alluded to, data is a problem. Data licenses are a problem. Synthetic data is a huge tool. We need it so badly that we've built tools to develop it, and then we've shared those. But it does come with its own biases. That's a challenge. That's a research challenge that would be fun for someone to magically solve for us all. These platforms, right, we've got to share them, we've got to make them open. We're doing our best, and we're moving forward. You could certainly find cases where it could be more open, probably. But like my team works with partners around the world. Some of the governments we work with have access to 1,000 GPUs to throw at a problem. Some of the partners we work with have 8. And so, you know, in order to create this proliferation, the Nemotron models, that family, right, we take everything we learn and we try and make these models capable of being fine-tuned to be near frontier or frontier plus quality. Yes, they come out in a handful of languages to date, but we know, we've seen cases. Viettel in Vietnam has trained a Nemotron model to actually be #1 on the Vietnamese benchmark list, even though we don't train the model in Vietnamese. So we're trying to create that capability. And I think research complements that, right? Because we're working with all of you. Our hardware, hopefully, we try and make sure it's the best, and the platform on top of it's the best. And again, the feedback from researchers is how we stay there. So the ecosystem you see on this stage is critical to us. And the open source ecosystem for AI is going to be critical for European AI and European AI adoption. So I think we commit software, we commit hardware resources, we're working with all the big supercomputing centers, all the AI procurements. You know, we want to be the platform of choice. Obviously, you do have other platform choices available. They do exist. We want to be better by enough of a margin that you don't want to exercise that choice, though.
But my question is, maybe, what is the fine line between being a model provider versus helping others to build models, right? Where's the balance, to your mind?
I don't see that as being a fine line, and I think we don't see a line there, right? We're going to provide a base model, right? NVIDIA is going to give that to the world, and you may or may not choose to use it, right? We build our pipelines to be modular. You don't have to use the whole thing. The model is, you can just look at what we've done, because we've done some performance enhancements, right? We're trying to make the model balance being both fine-tunable, economical to train if you take that model structure, ideally it's going to be more economical to train than some other structures, even if you start it from scratch with just that structure, because we're incorporating features, mixture. We were early with some of the mixture of expert stuff. We weren't the first. Research did that. Other people did that, but we incorporated it. And then we're looking at making the inference more energy efficient too, because no offense to my academic colleagues, but again, we need to see this stuff get used. It's got to be deployed. It's got to become real if it's going to help Europe, if it's going to help deliver government services, if it's going to help industry be competitive, if it's going to help the economy, remain in a growth mode. It's got to be used. And so it's got to be efficient to use, and therefore we're trying to design the whole stack, chip, software, model structures, to be as efficient as possible on the energy side.
One question about the potential collaboration. The thing actually POSAIS is part of trying to find a solution to this, but how, working in silos sometimes is extremely important. When you have a research thesis, you go on your way because you have your opinion and you have your ideas. But at some point, we may also what others are doing, So my question for the model builders here is like, how for you has been the challenge of working on your own path, because it may be unique research and you want to be, try things, but also collaborate with others to discuss about what they're doing and maybe doing it together. Like how porous are the communication between all of you, maybe the three of you? Did you happen to work together or whatever, or not yet? You wanna? No, please go and we changed the order.
I'll be quick.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So my team has been training models since early 22, before the ChatGPT moment, and for us, the European network was very, very important. The level of exchange we have differs from we check it in on each other and ask about, hey, what you're doing there, up to also changing data sets, changing pipelines, and so on. So I have to say, for example, the consortium Open Euro LLM, that has been very inspiring for us. Apertus, of course, yeah, there. and I'm sure I'm not aware of everything that's happening, but this is really, really important. What we would need is more funding to really, and compute, to foster this, to strengthen this. So that's not just like every 6 weeks phone call with Imanol, who's in the Apertus team, for example. Yeah. Okay. So this is really what I think would be important.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Oleg.
So first of all, no offense taken, John, but we need to talk about monitoring the power levels of internode bandwidth at some point. And also greetings to the research community from Imanol Schlag and Martin Jaki and also Anton Bosselut, who was here last year for POSAIS. So I'm stepping into their place because the professors are all over the world right now. I brought a poster that was in San Diego a couple of days ago. We're in Seoul for ICML this week. So we're very busy. We're on the academic road tour. And we also invite the academic community to Switzerland twice a year for the Open Source LLM Builders Summit, which we record and publish the proceedings from ourselves. And, we need better peer reviews. That's, I think, the kind of fundamental thing, the pace of development in this AI sector, the amount of pressure people have to get their ideas out early. You're hardly finished with your ablation and already, everyone's expecting you to push the results out. And I think one area where we're particularly struggling is replicating benchmarks. I mean, we rely very much on commercial platforms right now, like artificial analytics, to compare the scores of these models, where the benchmarks are being done probably very professionally, but from a vantage point that is not particularly favorable to scrutiny, to academic analysis. And it's also not favorable to the buyers, the users, the implementers and integrators of systems when the models are compared only from like a very absolute perspective. And we don't really differentiate between models enough. We really focus so much on just kind of beating ourselves to the top of the ladder with the most performant model, but we don't actually think about what role would it have in a workflow enough. And I think that what you said before about doing lots of experiments, the fun factor is definitely present. But we also need to, really maybe advance the open reviews process and come up with some better tools for exchanging our data. Yeah.
Julie, you want to share your?
Oh, yeah, we've got quite a few points to pick up on. Maybe starting with evaluation. That is a real disaster. And I think especially even if you just open up one of these benchmarks and look inside and look at what you're evaluating the models on, it can sometimes be quite scary. Some of the major benchmarks, you look at the data that these models are being tested on and you think, I'm not sure I want my model to be that good. So what we're testing the models for, we are often, I think, testing very blindly. And when you want to shift that to a context in which you do want to focus on another language, for example, as is our case, in Europe, the benchmarks are even worse. They're translated, they're automatically translated, and they're often very poor quality and very, very biased towards the US, because that's often where they're made. So evaluation is a problem, I think, at every level, from the way it's actually performed to the data sets used, et cetera. And I think that I agree with, we need to do some more thinking about what we actually want to do with these models. So how they perform in a benchmark is not necessarily telling us how they're going to perform in an industrial pipeline for a particular use case. So, we need to be a bit smarter about evaluation, I agree. Going back to also what Nicholas was saying about silos, to integrate, I don't think we need, I think the good news is there's a lot of really good things we can do together that don't involve regular collaboration, having too many video calls and stuff like that. We do check in with the different teams. We had a great call with apporter, with the BSC team also, who made Salamandra. And they helped us out a lot, just sharing insights. But for the most part, I think what we really need is as long as people are openly sharing their data sets that they've created, for their language, their benchmarks that they're creating, their experience through their papers and stuff like that, we can start to collaborate together. So far, I don't feel like there's been too much redundancy, too many silos. I think it's been important to have a lot of different actors trying to just get on their feet and just figure out how this stuff works. But in the future, I think definitely we need to start thinking more.
And John, you were mentioning me. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce something that I think you both leaned into here. Probably one of the biggest success factors that my team sees when we're working with partners around the world is if there's no focus on on having a custom evaluation for what you're trying to do, if you don't have a project plan and a budget, staff mostly, not so much compute, but staff, for the developing an evaluation, the project is much less likely to succeed. Good evaluation leads to much more successful projects.
I have one last silo. And that's not a scientific community silo. And for most of the model builders that I've met, their horizon ends on uploading a model on Hugging Face. and that's what we're trying to do differently in Sophie. We want to work really as early as possible with the industry applications, because we're funded by the Ministry of Economics. They want our models to be beta tested. Right now we're beta testing with Bosch, Mercedes, and a lot of industry players, get the feedback, and then we do the reruns of the model according to the feedback and see what we got there. So the point about making efficient models and really that suits the purpose, that has become for us a key ingredient, which is challenging because industry and research, sometimes they don't speak the same languages. But I think over the next 18 months, we'll get there to a common level of understanding.
So there is a huge incentive problem at some point. Researchers just want to publish papers. Model builders just want to upload it on Hugging Face. At some point, API companies just want more users. So that's and everybody wants more compute, at least. The last round here before having a question. So please have your question ready. About incentives, we had this discussion also about what should be the European models' incentives, actually building these models. And for me, I don't know if you know Greek tragedy, Sophocles or Romeo and Juliet. At the end, so when my professor of Greek literature used to say that, at the end, you can define most of them, of course, many ways, but at the end, the hero always have a loyalty choice. Loyalty for love or loyalty for family, and this is the Greek tragedy can be defined most of the time, but at least this. And you have two loyalties in the same time, you're loyal to your family, loyal to your love, you will have to betray someone. It's an obligation, and this is why at some point Juliet kill herself, whatever, because it's an impossible thing to make. And I have one question to ask you here, is about the incentives of European models. For example, some of them are looking for SOTA models or frontier models. They want to compete with the top of whatever, GPT, Claude, whatever, open source models should be, and their goal should be there. Some people believe on the other side that these models actually, because there is the geopolitical wall, but there is the environmental wall, there is the ethical wall, there is so many things, and we should actually do our thing. Everyone, we should do our thing. Frontier model is maybe not sustainable, and we should go for sustainable models. So maybe can I ask you, like, for you as researchers, as builders, what do you think should be the thing, or at least what purpose are you following, and what is your loyalty into these things, into building things? So, Oleg, I know Oleg, you had a strong opinion on this, so.
Well, I mean, I have to speak a bit more personally at this point because, I was born in the former Soviet Union, and I do not recognize the country that has become today. I am a very, very passionate believer in Europe. I think Switzerland is the most European country in the world. I mean, come on, we have...
It's why it's in the center, Or center left, but...
Not to discuss now, I think. Oleg.
We can do it over beers, yes, and baguette. Yeah, so we just had the AI for Good summit in Geneva. So I was there to take part in workshops with, we have like a project around International Geneva AI Innovation Program. So researchers are being matched with folks from international organizations, co-creating solutions involving apertus or other models and projects from the research that's happening in machine learning and artificial intelligence. And, I think this general vibe around, when I arrived in Paris last night, the first thing I saw was Le Monde Diplomatique. Did you see the title page this morning? Yeah, it's not a very friendly welcome, right? Because, I mean, and it's the same, people are really asking, what do we want these tools that are making our children dumber, that are making our politicians, quick to commit to some kind of crazy plan? Well, we have to stay focused on the science within the scientific community. But in discussion with diplomats, politicians, educators, we have to respect their problems, their wishes, and maybe start to redefine the fundamental relationship that people are having, not just to artificial intelligence, but technology, because this is just the next wave of technological upgrades that are happening. And we've been through all this before. I've been working in this industry for 30 years. I've been working, back when we were still working on consoles, on black and white screens. And we were just prompting back then, and we're prompting now. And it's not that different. So.
Thank you, Oleg. Julie or Nicolas, you want to start?
I tend to agree with a lot of what Oleg said.
We should go SOTA frontier, or should we do our own, whatever, ethical first and constraint first thing?
See, I'm sort of less blown away by trying to catch up with the SOTA thing. I have to say, when I use Claude and stuff, I do get very impressed. I think this is wonderful. But I do think a lot of what's behind Claude, too, that makes it so wonderful is probably really, really good data and really smart agentic frameworks. And I do think we can, if you have a focused use case and you know what you want to do with your model, I do think it's possible to probably do some really good things if you have those ingredients with smaller models. And I think that kind of approach makes a lot more sense for Europe.
Because you remember in 2023, Google has this leaked memo. We never know their leaked memo, if they're really leaked or on purpose or not. But it said that open source, there is no moat, right? Open source at the end will always catch up. Sometimes they will take longer, sometimes it will be shorter. But there is no moat, and this is why some people have thought that, model is not the product at some point and everything. So this is why it's a question that is important. Nicolas, you have an idea?
Yes, I have a very clear opinion. I can make it really short.
More compute.
Absolutely.
More compute.
Yes, more compute, that has been said, but we absolutely need frontier AI made in Europe if we want to be in the driver's seat, everything regarding ethics and regulations, cybersecurity, you name it. We need to build this ourselves. We cannot live on the illusion of building applications on imported AI. And it is not a question of large models versus small models of whatever, how many parameters are allowed to even build in Europe. We should end this discussion and really start building. We should scratch out the or and replace it with an and for this I see a lot of fruitful for science, for AI engineering, and also for our AI infrastructure in general in Europe, that I believe there's a high potential for a lot of ingenuity and innovation to come.
So, John, we will do if that's okay, we will do the rule we do in stand-up comedy or in theater. If one applause, everybody applause, right? We do that? Okay, so can you try one applause? As a community, you know, we are coherent as a community, right? John, do you see, like, based on, you know, your international vision, do you see, like, different part of the world having different incentives, objectives, or, you know, it's distributed?
I think there's very much case by case. There are a lot of people with ambitions to build a local frontier class model. I think there's an experience factor. I don't think starting that from scratch is easy. I think there's a lot of, just like my earlier student example, right? You could attempt to take a child and just hope that they get to general relativity. You could teach them. You could take them step by step to the point where now they can decide, do I want to go get a PhD in physics or not? For some people, that's going to be a goal they want to pursue, right? They look at all the investments they could make. Yep, that's the one we want to put our money on. The other people are not going to have that option. Some countries will not have that option. Europe can club together. Europe can do some interesting things. Europe is big. But there are individual countries in Europe that do not have that option. They are going to have to, and countries in other areas, they're going to have to look at their AI supply chain and make really smart, tough choices. They're going to have a plan B, but they're going to have to decide, who's my friend? What can I afford to do? What can I do now? Because a frontier class model in 5 years and doing nothing until then is probably not a good plan.
Yeah, it reminds me of what you said. Bernard de Chartres, it's a French priest of the 13th century, who said, we're just dwarves on the shoulder of giants who were before us, right? That Newton also took at the time. So yeah, so even in research, we're always on the shoulder of giants before, who published before and helped us to go there. So it's time for the questions. So for people who have loaded their questions. So yeah, how many questions do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I will take the first 5, and please, we'll take the 5 in a row. We will load the context, and then we'll be able to answer. So I think, yep, here, the first one here. Hey, I know you.
Yeah, you know me. Hi. Currently, there are around 12-ish Frontiers Lab that are very well funded. The open source AI initiatives altogether are not matching the financial resources of even one of those labs right now. So we are punching in, we are not in the same class. What made the open source world able to compete with large industries captains like Microsoft, IBM, and the others was that the barrier of entry was very low, and we could have volunteers contribute and make up for that gap, which is not true with AI. And so right now we have dozens of open source AI initiatives that are all competing for talent, data, compute in their own lane, seldomly working together. And I hear about the sharing of information and so on, but at the end of the day, the gigawatt is the gigawatt, and if it's not there, it's not there. And so we are fighting out of our league in a bazaar way, which worked for software, but doesn't work for AI. And so when do we go for a bit more organized, centralized, whatever, which is not open source by design, or how we do it, but to be able to compete?
Thank you very much. And just for, you are humble, but Christophe was the head of the International Wikimedia Foundation a few years ago. So just thank you, Christophe. Another question here? So with the first 5 who raised their hand, right? So I don't remember exactly who it was, but we have 3 here. Yeah. Please try to keep it as a question, not at the demonstration.
Thank you, and it's a wonderful presentation today. I have a question which is not about the models by themselves, because the models sit in an environment, in a platform, and my question is that when I'm using a model, it will not give me the same results if it's the model LLM by itself, or if it has all the skills and the tools and all these things. Are you aware, my question, about any platform, AI platform, which is European and open source?
Thank you. We had another question from the gentleman behind you. So, okay, the amplification of the models, the tools and everything that may change the response, right? The platformization, yeah, okay.
Yeah, hi. I'm Bhavya, and I'm working for Ranger AI. My question is related to the open source models. Let's say if I'm an open source model developer, how can I be monetized? If I don't have a company, how I would be succeeding in this race.
Thank you. So yeah, financing open source contributions, right? In the space. Yeah, 2 here, and then we're good.
Yes.
Questions?
Hi. I'm from the Digital Public Goods Alliance, and my question is around, and chiming more into the ethics question that you just did, because these models are going to be used outside of Europe. I can tell you that. We work with a lot of governments, and if you think the compute in Europe is not enough, you should see in the Global South. So I don't know if you're taking any considerations, not only on the use cases specific on the industry or research outputs that you're aiming for, but also on how these responsible and ethical practices are embedded and the consequences that it might have also when they are used outside of those contexts where you're aiming to achieve more uses from.
Yeah, worldwide use. And then last but not least, here.
Hi, my question is about the languages, because we're in Europe, and the fact is when we are focusing on the way it is thinking, the AI is basically translating each word in English, basically it thinks in English, and after that it will translate it in the previous language. My question is, what is, in your point of view, the right place to the foreign languages, on the true foreign languages, in the way of thinking of these AI in your model training initiatives?
Thank you. So we'll try to, they're really different. I tried to find some cohesion into the question, but actually they're quite different. So maybe we can start about the 12 labs, about the question about the 12 labs. So want to answer? Yeah.
The question for about the 12 labs. I think it's very important to, the question that you raised is very important. Can we even do it? And we should definitely do it, yeah, and then evaluate how we're moving along, but not like try to clarify the question before we even start. So, for example, Telecom AI Cloud. Everyone says, oh, we need to build gigafactories, and gigafactories mean gigawatt and all of that. Also a point that you have mentioned. So right now when we train on the Telecom AI cluster, we're currently training a 120B model, and it works on 15 megawatts, the whole system. And I think we're just using a fraction of that. So, and this will get us in the territory of frontier AI. Of course, in the next step, if we want to train an even bigger model, we might need to look for bigger data centers. But yeah, let's see where we land, and then take it step by step.
John, I've seen you. Maybe no. I thought you were moving the microphone, so no, not for this one.
I guess maybe one piece on thinking about that competition with the frontier model builders is, right, almost by definition, the key thing for building these models is data, right? Everything's dependent on the data. And there's 2 pieces that I think we haven't talked about here yet around this open data. One is, if the data is open, then the frontier models are going to use that data as well. So if the quality of your model is dependent on the quality of your data, and your data is open, then you are never going to be too far ahead because your data is also going to be open. And the other piece about that is, right, with these, open data is a brilliant, on the other side, defense against data poisoning attacks. As these models get bigger, as more and more synthetic data, there's more and more data getting hoovered up, I think there's an interesting case to be made for open data around the model as improving the transparency and the trustworthiness, because you can start, we may not be doing much of it now, but we can start looking for what's influencing our model in ways we don't want it influenced.
About the platform, about the platformization, just trying to answer the questions. Like I remember Satya Nadella from Microsoft said, OpenAI is not a model company; it's an application company. It's not about the models; it's about what they build around it. So, do you know of platforms, open platforms that enable models to not be just models? No is an answer.
So you're talking about like Open Router, or?
I think the question was more about like platforms that enable models to be augmented by application capabilities, right, or stuff like that. If you don't know, you don't know.
I mean, on our technical documentation, I think we have about 10 various open source projects, things like VLLM, SGLang, Olama, Mozilla's Llama files, all of these container formats that are absolutely essential because they're what makes the users of the model possible. And it's also, sometimes it's the part of the user experience, sometimes it's the middleware, many opportunities for developers to get involved in these communities and contribute, and many of them are well funded and very, operating with a lot of cycles and, thousands of bugs in the bug tracker you can just pick up and start committing to. I don't know if that really goes into that direction.
Oh, don't know, Ed. Okay. About the ethics, we will build models, the open models by design, free software models, open source models will be used by anyone. Do we have to do something like that? Ethical license, or no, we should stay open?
It has to be discussed. We have to test the model before we get it out, and the bigger and the more complex and the more capable the model gets, the more this needs to be discussed, how this will be distributed. Of course, yeah. I think that's a geopolitical rationale of Europe. How to deal with that. But let's just first get there and get Frontier AI going.
Yeah, we will make Frontier, and then we will decide if we want to do the PR about it's too dangerous for the world. We will first keep it for ourselves, right?
Yes, I want that.
I think on this point, I'd just like to point out that, ethics also should be kind of a benchmark. I mean, also, many projects developed within academia are done out of, let's say egotistic, let's say passion, curiosity, but also, career advancement is often also a priority. And when it comes to whether the funding or, the, kind of criteria, just choice criteria for which model to use, other dimensions need to be considered. So there's, within the Apparatus project, it's been quite a strong commitment from the beginning to be compliant, not just with Swiss data protection regulations, but with the upcoming EU AI Act legislation. And the basic mechanism of that is the Swiss AI Charter, which is a constitutional type document, a couple of pages long with 11 points that model where the behavior of the model is described and outlined. And then we also have a reinforcement learning process where stronger kind of teacher models test Apparatus on compliance to those values. And then we also have a legal team which scrutinizes the model in various kind of use cases and scenarios. And this something is really important kind of on a technical level, but in order to trust that process, you need independent bodies. Like we were evaluated by Trinity College in Ireland on the GPAI adhesion. We were quite pleased to know that we were the top of the list. That looks also at the kind of the documentation, the transparency of the model. But when it comes to the funding question also, I think people, and let's say foundations and governments, they would want to put money behind something that was, not for profit and owned, a joint ownership structure, which maybe goes beyond just an academic alliance, right? So I've been working a bit also on the side to create a cooperative, a cooperative inference utility in Switzerland, modeled after projects within, Activity Pub and many other spaces where people just provide hosting services, which are jointly owned. And I think this is slowly but surely, this idea is taking off. But we need to bring that up at a much higher level. We need really a non-profit foundation that owns and operates and sets the governance and is accountable for this model. And I'm hopeful it will be inclusive. It won't be just apparatus. It'll be a range of models. And if we do it right, then it'll be European and not just Swiss.
Thank you very much. I took the responsibility to take too much question. I thought we would have the time, but let's keep, the two other questions for the break about the language and the other stuff. Thank you very much for this true discussion. I hope you felt the authenticity. We can have some warm applause for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.